to do on pretty much every felling cut. And it does change depending on if I got to cut it above ground or below, lower. But for the most part, a typical cut, what I try to do is put my left shoulder against the tree so I can look straight up and adjust for the lean and try to eye it up of where I want it to go. And where I'm aiming for here is that dead tree right there, because that's where I think it should go, is right into it. And that's going to help bring the lean just around alongside that big red oak over there. What I do is I lean on the tree so I'm close to it. Why? Because the saws have a sight on them. That black line that tells you where you're going to go if you cut it to that point. When I look at the saw, when I lay it in the cut, I look right behind it and I can see exactly where it's going to go. It's called gunning the saw or sighting the tree. And what you do is you lay over here, lean against the tree. I'm also not at risk of a chainsaw kickback when I'm not really in line with the saw bar as well, so it's pretty good technique. And when I'm standing on this side as opposed to the other side cutting, my eye is directly over that line, so it's easier for me to see exactly where this tree is going to go. So that's why I always start on this side of the tree. It's a good cutting position and my eye is directly over the sight and I can aim this saw, cut a little bit, maybe even take a step back and look at it and then cut some more. And if the saw was cutting crooked, I may have to adjust it by the time I'm done with my cut down here. What you're looking for, ideally, is 70 degree of an angle or more. You can get 90 degrees if you need it, get 90 degrees. I find it easier, personally speaking, to do a cut like this than to do one that's shaped like this where there's two cuts. Why is that? Two reasons. Number one, you just come over here and lay the saw in. When you come and make this cut, it's very easy for your eye to find level of the bar, rather than finding this angle and then meeting them perfect at where your last cut was. Making two angle cuts meet perfect is more difficult to me than making one angle cut without much thought, just guying it up, making it straight, and then coming in straight in like this. It makes it easier. Number two, I make the top cut first, because that's the most important part of this to make the hinge work. And the second good thing about it is when I go to make my second cut, I have my eye looking through my first cut and I can see the tip of that bar. And I know when I get to the end, I don't overcut it that way. So you can make your first cut, find level, and come in and then look down your other cut until you see the chain come through, and then you stop. And what you want is a nice clean hinge. If you overcut one way or the other, you want to nip it a little bit and get it straight, because that'll cause the hinge to break before you want it to. So you want to be real particular about this cut. The back cut is the least important part of this thing once I set up my hinge. You know, the rest of this tree, it doesn't matter how it cuts. Crooked, sideways, doesn't matter. What matters is here and how much hinge I leave, and then that's it. You guys all see that?
You only need to go in a little ways on the angle.
What I try to do is almost straight up and down to get close to 70 to 90 degrees. That way I don't have to make an undercut if I don't have to. That's harder to try to match. So on a normal tree like this, I can come in almost straight so it's on a slope. Not much thought goes into how deep it's going to go because it's almost straight. So I just cut down deep enough to where I get to close to 80% of the overall width. There's a little flare over here you can't see, so there's going to be a little extra holding over there, but I think that might even help us to keep this tree in check. You know, and like I said, problem is with this much lean, I'm going to have to double wedge it, which is called stacking the wedge. But if I had another wedge, it would probably work perfect. But I'm not 100% confident that's not going to hit that tree. You know, I'm going to do the best I can so I don't look like a fool for you guys. But to be honest with you, if this was a job site, I'd do it differently to make sure I didn't hit that tree if I had to. Out here in the woods, I'll go a little bit more high risk on there.
So you
Let you know.
about 20%?
Huh?
You 20%?
Depends on how round the tree is. That's why they don't say go in a third, a quarter, whatever. Because if a tree is oblong, you might only go in 10% of the width because it's oblong. You just want to get to the point where it's not quite full width. You want 80% of the tree's width to get the maximum hold out of your hinge. If you go in where it's only this much of the diameter and the tree's this big, it more or less will barber chair on you. And if you go too deep, you end up losing a lot of the control out of what your hinge can do for you if you stay closer to that 80% diameter. You know, so you want to go almost as wide as the tree, as deep as you got to go to get almost the width, but about 20% less, around about. That's really the number. It's almost like a 1/3 rule, where years ago everyone would say do 1/3 the way in. Because 1/3 on a really round tree is just about 80% of the width. But because all trees aren't round, there's flares and there's oblong shapes. So you really should, you can't say every tree is 1/3. Some trees is, you know, only 1/10 get into that diameter. That's what you really. All right, so let's make this thing hit the ground. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plunge cut it on both sides, and I'm gonna set up a couple wedges, tap them in, finish the cut, and then see if it goes over. I'll tap it as it goes. Hopefully she won't go sideways on me. If she does, then I'll cut it free, and then you guys can come back in and laugh at me. Why don't you guys all just kind of take off towards the rear so you know you're not going to be in the way if it goes sideways. All the power I'm going to get from the wedges, so what I'm going to do now is adjust the lean, try to nip a little bit of fiber so it'll go over. And clear.
that.
Yeah, try it a little bit. That's why when we have a lot of side knee, it's so much easier to put a high line in to aid in the help. But I still would use the wedges because it takes pressure off the hinge. So I would combine the two. If all you had was wedges though, it would still work, but it's difficult.